Most women don't realize the full power of their silence until it's too late for him to escape the echo. In a world addicted to noise, to replies, to chasing and pleasing and explaining, there are women who vanish without a scream, not out of anger, not to manipulate, but because something in her finally understood. He was not listening. Not really. He was only watching her react to his neglect, feeding his ego with her anxiety, counting the ways she tried to prove her worth in his storm. And then she stopped. There is nothing louder to a man than the absence of the woman he thought would never walk away. This silence, it is not emptiness. It is ancestral. It is alchemical. It is the echo of 1,000 years of feminine restraint finally remembering its spine. This is not the silence of defeat. It is the silence of awakening. A woman who walks away without warning is not confused. She has seen something. She has seen the shadow behind the charm, the wound behind the bravado, the hollow ego that feeds on her uncertainty. Carl Jung would call it a confrontation with the animus projection, when a man unconsciously casts his deepest fears and fantasies onto the woman before him. And when she begins to see herself not as his fantasy, but as a sovereign soul, the illusion cracks. The spell breaks. She steps away, not because she wants to punish him, but because she finally refuses to be a mirror for his unresolved chaos. He doesn't understand it at first. At the beginning, he thinks she's playing a game, that she's trying to make him chase. But days turn into weeks, and the silence deepens, not in anger, but in absence. And that's when something ancient begins to stir in him. The fear that he is no longer being watched, that his performance no longer matters, that the woman who once ached to be seen now sees herself far too clearly to return. What haunts him is not the memory of her body, but the sound of her voice not responding, not explaining, not justifying. He replays old texts like sacred scrolls, wondering when the energy shifted. He checks her status updates, not for answers, but for proof that she still exists. He doesn't miss her presence. He misses the part of himself that only came alive in her attention. And in that space between what was said and what will never be said again, he meets his own shadow. Jung wrote that, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. And this woman, the silent presence now gone, was not his fate. She was his mirror. She held up the light and made visible all the parts of him he tried to bury. His need for control, his emotional cowardice, his hunger for admiration disguised as love. And when she left, she took the mirror with her. Now he is alone with the rawness of his own reflection. But this is not his story. This is hers. The woman who goes quiet is not weak. She is not cold. She is not heartless. She has simply grown weary of being misunderstood, misread, mishandled. Her silence is not the absence of feeling. It is the arrival of clarity. She no longer confuses emotional chaos with passion. She no longer believes that rescuing a broken man is love. She knows now that the one who is meant for her will not need to be explained the value of her presence. He will feel it and cherish it before it disappears. And you, yes, you, reading this, you felt it too, haven't you? That moment when the words dried up in your mouth, when you realized your softness was mistaken for permission, when you gave and still felt invisible. And so one morning or one midnight, you just stopped. No rage, no breakdown, just stillness. And he didn't notice. Not right away, but he is noticing now. He is haunted now. Because the silence you gave him, it wasn't punishment. It was a gift. The kind that forces a man to look inward, to sit in the stillness of what he destroyed, to feel the absence like a wound he cannot bandage with a new face or a fast distraction. And in the corners of his memory, your voice still echoes, not with words, but with all the things you never said, all the love he couldn't hold, all the peace he didn't protect, all the intimacy he feared because it asked him to be real. But this isn't a revenge story. This is the story of reclamation. She went quiet, but in her quiet, she returned to herself. Now, he dreams of her in places she's never been. Her laugh echoes in rooms she never stepped foot in. Her presence haunts the edges of his mind, not because of what she did, but because of what she refused to continue doing proving what he cannot name, but deeply feels, is a withdrawal of her psychic energy. The invisible thread that once tied his chaos to her comfort has been severed. She is no longer holding space for his indecision, his inconsistency, or his emotional immaturity. Her silence is not passive. It is sacred. It is a boundary drawn in the language of the soul. Jung understood this kind of departure, not a physical leaving, but a psychic detachment. When a woman reclaims her animus, her inner masculine principle, she no longer seeks completion in a man. She no longer accepts half-love, hoping it will one day become whole. She becomes a mountain she once tried to climb in someone else. And the man, now left alone in the debris of his projected fantasies, begins to unravel. Because a woman who withdraws her energy does something few men are prepared for. She disrupts their internal archetype of feminine devotion. For centuries, women have been conditioned to stay, to speak, to soften, to soothe. But this woman, she rewrites the myth. She becomes the enigma, the ghost, the sacred absence that forces transformation. Some men will run from it, distract themselves with louder women, easier love, temporary validation. But it never works. Because once a man has been loved by a woman who knows herself, even for a moment, nothing shallow can ever satisfy again. He becomes spiritually starved in rooms filled with noise. He scrolls through faces but sees only hers. And yet, he cannot reach her. Not because she's unreachable, but because the version of him that lost her no longer qualified for her return. She has evolved. And this is a true heartbreak. Not that she left, but that she transformed into leaving. Her silence was not a void. It was a chrysalis. And in the stillness, she became something untouchable. Not cruel, not superior, but whole. You see, when a woman stops talking, she starts listening to herself. The voice that had been drowned out by over-explaining, over-functioning, over-loving finally becomes audible. She hears the quiet truth she ignored for too long. Her worth is not up for debate. And when that truth becomes her compass, she no longer looks back, not even to see if he noticed, because she knows now. The man who needed her to lose herself for him to feel powerful was never worthy of her to begin with. This isn't bitterness. It's awakening. You don't owe him a final conversation. You don't need closure from someone who never opened in the first place. You don't have to explain the pain he pretended not to see. Let your silence say what your words never could. I have nothing left to prove. Let him be haunted, not by revenge, not by spite, but by your absence. Let the echo of your once open heart follow him through every shallow encounter. Every night he lays awake wondering where it all went wrong. Let the memory of your softness serve as a mirror he can no longer look into without flinching. And most importantly, let yourself be free, because the most dangerous woman is not the one who shouts, not the one who cries, not even the one who fights. It's the one who walks away and never looks back. And yet, even now, she doesn't hate him. She sees the boy in the man, the wound beneath the armor. She recognizes a fractured ego terrified of being seen. But she also knows it is not her job to fix what refuses to heal. She can love from afar, quietly, deeply, but she no longer offers herself to someone who only values her in her absence. The echo he hears? It's not just her silence. It's his own soul begging to evolve. It's his psyche screaming for initiation. It's the universe pulling him into shadow work, through the wound she left, into the healing he avoided for far too long. And maybe, just maybe, if he listens closely enough to that echo, he might begin his own journey toward becoming. But that path is no longer hers to walk. There is a turning point in every man's life when he encounters a woman who was not sent to love him, but to awaken him. She did not arrive to fulfill his fantasies, soothe his ego, or play the role of his emotional nurse. She came as fire disguised in softness, as silence wrapped in song, as a mirror so precise it scared him. He thought she was his counterpart, but she was his catalyst. And when she went quiet, the mirror cracked. He could no longer see himself through her reflection. And in that shattering, he was left alone with the very thing he'd avoided his entire life, his own emptiness. That's the thing about emotionally unavailable men. They don't fear intimacy with you. They fear intimacy with themselves. And when you go silent, you remove the distraction. You take away the sound that allowed them to avoid the silence within. Now, he hears it clearly. The void. This void is not new. It was always there, formed in childhood, hardened through neglect or overindulgence, layered with bravado and charm. But your love, your presence, had once kept at bay. You filled it with your laughter, your patience, your longing to be chosen. And the moment you step back, that void opened wide again. It swallowed the illusions whole. Carl Jung called this the encounter with the shadow, the part of ourselves we deny, suppress, and project onto others. And that's what you were to him, a canvas. Onto you, he projected every unsolved riddle of his masculinity, his need for control, his fear of vulnerability, his hunger for admiration, his fear of abandonment. And when you refused to play along, when you didn't beg, didn't chase, didn't explain, his shadow had nowhere left to go, no more stage to perform on, no more drama to justify his internal war. Just silence, just the echo. You became the ghost of his unfinished work, the stillness that won't go away, not because you're haunting him, but because the part of him that met you was never truly whole. And wholeness, once glimpsed, becomes a craving. Once he tasted the authenticity of your presence, he can no longer settle for the synthetic. He tries to fill the gap with distractions, with casual bodies, with bravado, but the echo remains. Because the echo is not you, it's him. It's the sound of his soul finally asking questions he's avoided for decades. Why did I sabotage something real? Why did I feel so powerful, making her uncertain? Why did I only realize her value after she left? Why was I so terrified to let her truly see me? These questions do not come with quick answers. They come with unraveling, with months of restlessness, with deep internal reckoning. And meanwhile, you are no longer available for analysis. You are not sitting on the other end of this confusion. You are not texting, posting, or performing your worth. You are becoming. Because your silence wasn't just for him. It was a portal for you. You stopped speaking to him so you could finally listen to yourself. And what you heard in that silence was the ancient voice of your own dignity, of your feminine power, of your inner wholeness whispering. You were never meant to prove your value to anyone who couldn't see it. This is the essence of feminine awakening. Not rage, not revenge, but release. You stop expecting closure. You stop hoping he will wake up and change. You stop tying your worth to his capacity to love. You don't need to be the one who got away to feel important. You just need to be the one who came back to herself. The irony? It's in your absence that he finally sees your presence. But by then, you have already remembered something far more important. Your voice is not for begging. Your energy is not for convincing. Your love is not for rent. He will replay it over and over. The moment you stop replying, the final time you said nothing, the absence of your goodbye, and he will wonder if you ever truly cared. But the truth is, you cared so deeply you had to let go. You chose yourself in the face of his indifference. You walked away not because you were weak, but because you were finally strong enough to stop shrinking. And now, you are not the woman who was left. You are not the woman who stayed. You are the woman who rose in silence and never looked back. There is a sacred terror that men feel when a woman no longer needs them to understand her. It is not loud. It does not storm into rooms or slam doors. It simply detaches gently, powerfully, like a silk ribbon slipping from a hand that never held it properly. That's how it happened. She went quiet, not because she had nothing left to say, but because she realized speaking would no longer serve her. He had not been listening. Not truly. He had only been measuring her words against his comfort. And so, she stopped offering him the map to her soul. This is the moment when the masculine begins to fracture. When he is no longer fueled by her confusion. When she is no longer orbiting his moods. When she is no longer responding to the subtle manipulations he barely acknowledged within himself. You see, silence isn't just an absence of sound. It's the presence of self. Her quiet became a mirror he could no longer shatter. A stillness that exposes noise. A void that made his inner chaos impossible to ignore. Jung once said, "People do anything no matter how absurd, to avoid facing their own soul. But this woman, this archetypal feminine force, refused to participate in his avoidance. Her silence was not passive. It was the ultimate confrontation. He begins to feel it in strange ways, in songs that sting, in places that echo with memory, in small, mundane moments where her absence whispers through the cracks of his armor. And the haunting begins, not of her body, but of what she represented. She was never just a woman. She was his chance to rise beyond ego, to meet himself in her reflection, to become more than his conditioning, to stop seeking power over her and start building presence within himself. But he missed it. He mistook her depth for drama, her intuition for insecurity, her love for weakness. And now she is gone. What's left behind is not just longing, it's reckoning. Because once a man experiences a woman who is emotionally integrated, spiritually aware, and deeply embodied, nothing less will ever feel like home. Not because she was perfect, but because she was real. And realness, once felt, becomes a ghost that polite conversations and casual encounters can never exorcise. You, the woman who went silent, you carry something holy in your detachment. You are no longer a participant in his half-built narratives. You have exited the theater of his ego, and in doing so, you've stepped into your own myth. This is what terrifies him. Not that you're angry, not that you've moved on, but that you've moved inward, into your own life, into your own depth, that you've learned to hold yourself in the very places you once asked him to meet you. And yet, in some distant chamber of his psyche, he still hopes you'll text, hopes you'll break, hopes that somehow your silence will end so he can avoid the parts of himself now screaming for attention. But silence, once chosen in place of truth, cannot be undone by longing. This is your emancipation. This is your individuation, Jung's word for the soul's journey back to wholeness. You are no longer the fragmented woman who loved through wounds. You are the integrated force who left when love no longer mirrored truth. And if you ever wonder if a part of you still aches the way it could have been, remember this. You did not lose him. He lost access to you. He lost the invitation to witness your becoming. He lost the right to call what he never cherished a loss. Let him sit with the echo. Let the silence become his teacher, because it will teach him more than your words ever could. It will show him the shape of the woman he could not contain, the power of the presence he tried to control, the depth of the soul he only touched at the surface. And you have become the silence that heals. There comes a moment in every awakened woman's life when she no longer seeks to be understood by the man who made her feel invisible. She no longer waits to be chosen, explained, or forgiven. That moment is silent, but its impact is seismic. She becomes the absence that purifies, the stillness that reveals, the voice that now speaks only within her, to her for her. And he is left alone in a world that once been around her presence. He remembers her now not just in memory, but in sensation. The way the air felt different when she entered the room. The calm she brought to his nervous system. The way her eyes searched his, not to trap him, but to see him. And still he ran, or froze, or mocked what he couldn't bear to meet inside himself. He is not cruel. He is unready. And now, too late, because there's a cost in mishandling a woman who has done her inner work. A woman who has met her shadows, tended her trauma, bathed in the loneliness of self-reconstruction. That kind of woman does not return out of nostalgia. She returns only to herself. Jung wrote that every human has both masculine and feminine aspects within. A man who never integrates his inner feminine, his capacity for vulnerability, empathy, feeling, will unconsciously seek a woman to carry it for him. But when that woman lays it down, walks away, and becomes whole within herself, he is left face to face with the hollowness of an unbalanced psyche. That is what haunts him, not just her, but what she symbolized. She was the invitation to wholeness he never answered, the spiritual mirror he broke, the grace he misunderstood as weakness, the challenge he mistook for chaos. And now, she is gone. Not because she hates him, but because she has finally remembered. She does not belong in places where she has to convince someone of her value. This is not punishment. This is alignment. And you, yes, you who are watching this now, if you've ever gone quiet, not from pride, but from pain, not from strategy, but from clarity, know this. You are not cold. You are not cruel. You are sacred. You are free. You are no longer performing femininity for the male gaze. You are no longer shrinking your power for the comfort of the fragile. You are no longer offering softness to the unready. You are becoming what you always were, whole. And while he may still search for you in faces that smile too easily, in words that cost nothing, in women who haven't yet learned their worth, he will never again find you, because you are no longer available to men who require you to abandon yourself to be loved. There is a new man, somewhere, maybe already near, maybe still becoming, who will not need your pain to wake up. He will not treat your presence as optional. He will not make you beg for clarity, affection, or depth. He will have met his shadow, befriended it, integrated it. He will come not to drain, but to build, not to fix you, but to meet you. But even without him, you are already complete. And the man who once mistook your depth for drama, he may someday become conscious enough to understand what he lost. But by then you will not be waiting. You will not be watching. You will be dancing, rising, living a life that no longer depends on whether someone else sees your light, because you now see it yourself. Let this be the final echo. You are the storm he never saw coming, wrapped in silence. You are the mirror that refused to lie. You are the question he will never answer. You are the one who loved and then left. And that silence, it is not the end. It is your beginning. The woman who knows her worth doesn't chase. She chooses.